All right, this will be the installation of the 47605 42N. That is the 42-inch structured media center in steel without a cover. We're going to install it in the stud wall during rough-in stage of this project. Pull the top cover off. Inside is the enclosure and the mud guard. It's important that we keep this mud guard and we keep it safe. We're going to be using this at the end of rough-in stage in order to protect the cabling while the drywall is installed. So you can remove this by pulling out, but save this cardboard piece and make sure it doesn't get destroyed. I will just drop it back in the box for now, keep it out of the way. Structured Media Center is the instruction sheet, the foam for the grommets, which we'll install, the wood screws to screw the box in, and there are 6 of them in here. So we'll go ahead and install this box now. We're going to install the Structured Media Center in this open stud bay. This is a standard 16-inch on square stud bay. It's best practice to put the center of this box, of any box, doesn't matter which size, at about 48 inches to the center. So we'll mark this here. This box, Structured Media Center, includes slotted holes, which you can see here. These slotted holes allow you to adjust the depth of the box after the fact. So what we're going to do is put the enclosure roughly in position at the right height and mark one of the slots. This will allow us time to pre-drill some holes. We'll drill the first hole in the middle of that slot that we just marked. Pre-drilling out these holes, these wood screws will keep the studs from splitting. I've got the screws that came with the kit here. So we'll just grab one of them. So again, mark to your 4-foot mark. And there's the hole, roughly in the middle of the slot. And we'll drive it most of the way in, but not tight. Okay, so we can still adjust it. Now this will hold it in place while we drill the rest of the holes. Again, in the middle of the slot, excuse me while I step in front. Do the top and the bottom holes. All right, let's get the 4 corners first. Again, don't tighten it up. We still want to be able to adjust it. This Structured Media Center, we're going to set up for 1/2-inch drywall. You'll check the marks on the side, set it for 1/2-inch depth, and then tighten it up. There are 6 screws. There are additional slots here and here on both sides. You can use those. I prefer to keep these last 2 screws around to put in these tabs after the fact. This will hold us in place and allow us to continue the installation. All right, we're going to take out this knockout here. We're going to be bringing in our low voltage cables right here. There's 2 ways to do this. You can knock it out with a mount with 1 shot. You do have to be careful with this. You don't have to hit it very hard. And it will come right out. It'll take the center piece out. These products are designed as a nested. So you have 1.5 inch and a 2-inch knockout. 1.5 inch is all we're going to need for this installation, so I'll stop there. All the knockouts can be taken out the same way or with a screwdriver. I'm going to do the foam covers now. This is a self-healing foam grommet. It's used to protect the cable from the rough edges that we've just created with this knockout. This is a self-adhesive product. It's a peel and stick. You just drop it right into place. And I prefer to put one on the top and one on the bottom because now the inside, which is a knockout, has a very sticky foam exposed. So we'll put one on the inside and squish it all together. Now all we need to do is cut a slot in here in this foam, and the cable will go in there and it'll create a nice tight seal, which will keep drafts down. Also, it'll protect the edges, protect the cable from the rough edges. 47605 DP, which is a dual, it's basically a quad outlet with surge suppression on all ports. So I'll need to knock out the entire bottom section here. You can see there's a single gang, and then there's another part here, and we're going to take out both of these parts and the rib in between so that we can mount a full-size module in there. Same idea as before. We're just going to knock it out. That's one. I'm going to take out the second one. Same idea. You don't have to hit very hard. You can hit very, very hard, and then you'll end up bending the piece. It's not required. These are just tabbed in there. For the center part, we need to remove that with a pair of pliers with a rotating motion. The idea here, and this is just these are pretty simple. Just use the toothed end here, and we're just going to give this a twist. And it breaks off, and a little rocking motion, and it's out. Just as simple as that. We're going to cascade the two together. I've made some little jumpers here to connect line to line, and then we'll run our section into here. Our section of power cable into here. The ground is connected between the two with a jumper here and left open so I can put a wire nut onto it. The case, I've taken the knockout out and installed a clamp, which will protect, again, this cable as it enters in. We're going to drop this module into place. It sits loose for now. We'll bring the cable up through the clamp. This cable is still loose. It's not fastened in yet until we're done trimming. We'll expose the cable's inner conductors, a hot, a neutral, and a ground. There we go. So there's your hot, there's your neutral, and your ground. There we go. A good quality pair of cable strippers. Note what size the cable is. This is 14.2. Now the strip gauge is on the outlet. I'll tell you how far to strip it out. You can see there, I'm just a tiny bit long. So I'll just take off a tiny amount here. It's important that we're pretty precise on this. If your cable copper is too short, you will not get a good connection. If it's too long, it will leave exposed copper, which is not necessarily a safe thing to do, especially on the hot. So I'll take out, we'll check our gauge. It looks great. All right, since I've already preset this device, there are two holes on the back of this screw terminal system, and this screw is what clamps them in. So I'll make sure that my two from my other outlet are connected in here, and I'll drop these two in with the neutral first. We're in rough-in stage. The other end of this power cable is not terminated to anything. It will eventually go back as a dedicated circuit to the panel box and have its own circuit breaker. The two hots, make sure they're both fully seated. Put in the screws, make sure they're good and snug. And I'm going to tighten these other ones up here, just because I don't like the rattling. You never know what might be installed on the adjacent wall that would cause this little rattle. So the last thing to do here is to connect up your ground. For that, we'll use a wire nut. Until they start to twist together, that's good. And then we'll put on a piece of tape. It's a good practice on wire nuts to install a little bit of tape, 3 or 4 inches of tape around it, in order just to keep it from unwinding. There we go. That'll keep this wire nut, just to keep it from unscrewing. We're just stopping it from moving. And we'll go ahead and push this back in. I'm going to pull in an extra few inches of cable and double it over so that we have some slack in there, so this can be removed later. So once this is installed and the drywall is in, you won't have access to this anymore. Once we have some slack in there and it's setting where we want it, we'll tighten this clamp up. Last, you'll see that there are these screws. These screws they're included with the kit, have these little washers on them. You want to use the little star washers. Those are to promote a stronger ground. We'll line the holes up through the top plate, through the box, and into the Structured Media Center enclosure. These are self-tapping screws. They'll cut their own threads. So you do have to use a little bit of pressure to get them in. We'll set it in place, get it started, and then get the screwdriver out. Your screwdriver. It's best not to use a power driver for this. It's very easy to get a bit too ambitious with a power driver and drive it in too far. Once we've got one corner in, we'll go and do the opposite corner. That'll help line things up for the rest of the work to be done. All right, once all 4 of them are started, you can drive them all down tight. Again, it takes a little longer, but do this by hand. Keeps from stripping out the screws. Today's modern impact screwdrivers can put quite a bit of torque on here. On a self-threading screw like this, it's not necessary. There we go. So now we're set. The last thing to do will be to drive in a staple here to meet code. You'll see we have a nail block here to keep drywall screws from penetrating and touching the cable. So that will take care of this. All right, our next step here in the rough-in stage, and really the last step, will be to install the low voltage cables. We've installed this grommet already. I'm going to cut a little X in the top of it. Our cables are staged up here. We've got 8 Cat 6 and 4 coax cables. We'll go ahead and fish those in through the grommet. Don't kink the cables as you bring them in. We have an opportunity here to straighten things out. Now we'll have to put a clamp on here. So inside the box, you want to make sure you've got enough slack to reach the floor. So now what I'll do is I'll coil these cables up inside. They've already been labeled. See the label marks here. And we'll put a little tape on it in order to keep it in place, because we're about to be finished with this rough-in stage, and after we are finished here, we leave the site and the installation of insulation and drywall happens. So our job right now is to protect our work by getting the cables wrapped up inside. And going back to when we first opened this box, we saved our mud guard. Bring our mud guard in and put it over the box. Now this is again going to be used only for the rough-in stage. I'm sorry, after you complete the rough-in stage, it's going to be used only to protect the cables during the trim. Okay, so now that we've got it in there nice and tight, we can now walk away from the job site and allow the rest of the construction to continue. Once we completed our rough-in stage, we've left the site, we came back, the drywall's installed. It would normally be painted. Obviously it's not painted now, but for all intents and purposes, we're ready for the next step. So the mud guard has done its job. There's some mud smeared on the outside and dust and dirt. So this thing has kept our cabling hopefully clean and tidy inside. We'll pop it out. So there's some drywall dust in the bottom. We'll need to vacuum that out and clean up our cables, and then we'll be ready to proceed to trim this box out. So I'll go get a vacuum. Okay, vacuum it out. So we'll notice that this box is recessed in here. It's not flush. And up here it's a little bit more flush, but it's really not as flush as we want. This is about right. So we can adjust the depth of the box now. So I'll loosen the screws. And then pull the box out till it's flush with the edge of the drywall and tighten them up. What I'm going to do is put in some additional screws that will lock it in place. This is an important feature of the design of the Structured Media Center, allowing you to get this box looking nice and flush. So this, now that we've got it flush, in order to keep it from rocking and moving around in the future, we've provided these, where are they? These little tabs right here. These are open all the way around here so they can flex out. There's a small gap in this box between the stud and the box. It's maybe a 1/16 of an inch. If we just put a screw through here, you know, through one of these slots, it would warp the box. So we provided these, which will give, and they'll hold the depth. They'll lock it in place. So I'll go ahead and put in some screws now. And by letting it sink in like this, it doesn't warp the side of our box. There we go. So that will lock the box in place and keep it from moving in the future, so the enclosure is nice and secure now. I can proceed to start terminating the cables now. Let's undo our cable bundle. So we have plenty of slack to reach anywhere in the enclosure. I'm going to focus first on the category cables. We'll get these coaxial cables out of the way. These cables were marked as they were installed. I'm going to shorten them up because this is just too much slack. I'm going to shorten them up so they can reach the bottom of the enclosure. So what I'll do, I'll grab some tape to keep the bundle reasonable and to show me where to mark the cables and make sure we have enough to reach down below and then turn around. So there are many ways to mark this. You can use pre-labeled, you can use mechanical labels. I tend to just use a Sharpie here. Now that I've relabeled them, I'm going to remove all the excess cable and just trim this up. I want to get enough cable that I can reach anywhere in the enclosure. Cut them nice and even and straight. For this project, we're going to be using the Category 6 twist and mount, so we'll go ahead and install that next. When you're doing this, this kind of installation, you want to plan ahead. Typically a good place to put this, because of the cable bulk here, to put the terminating equipment for this is to get it as high up in the enclosure and as close to the entrance as possible.